life is short. And a lot of people did that back then. Life is short. I don't really want to be the guy who wakes up at 5:45 every morning, gets on a train, goes to work for 12 hours, comes home, and just always worried about work, always worried about finances that I don't really care about. It wasn't what I wanted to be doing. So that was kind of the switch that, all right, I'm going to start doing something else. So I kind of dabbled I didn't leave the corporate life until 2004. So I spent 3 years as a suit and tie guy who would...
Okay. It was still at Time Inc.?
Yes, that was when I was vice president of Popular Science magazine. And I actually, from 2000 to 2004, I was with Popular Science. I would write, and I hung out with the writers mostly, even though I was the finance guy, because that's what I wanted to do. I wrote a few articles for them. I would do some product reviews. And, during the day, I would hustle up to Time Inc. I would do my suit and tie meetings, and then at night I would, drop my briefcase off and go down to Caroline's or go down to the Gotham or the Cellar and do some stand-up sets. I was doing improv, taking acting classes. I was trying to chase that creative muse.
So, what drew you to comedy?
It started again, a drunken night with the editor of Popular Science. We were out, and he was getting sick of the grind. He was just like, "Oh, I can't, I'm sick of this. I want to do something more creative." And I felt the same way. We got shots. We toasted that we were going to start working on a screenplay together. We were going to start a new path. Came home, told my wife, all excited. Went to work the next morning. I'm like, "We still in this together, buddy?" And he went, "Oh, I just went into my boss and I got promoted. So I'm going to really focus on work." But I never stopped. I just started writing screenplays, that weekend. And I read somewhere when you want to get better at dialogue, you should take an acting class, which I think is great for any writer. If you're trying to write a script or a screenplay, take an acting class. You don't have to become an actor, but just to see the mechanics of it. Because what sounds right in your head doesn't sound right as an actor saying it sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I really took an introduction to acting class. I liked that. I followed up with the next one. That teacher taught an improv class. I started doing some improv. Some of the improv guys did stand-up. So I started, they started bringing me to some shows, and that started taking off. So I just kind of fell into it, and all the things I wanted to do that I loved watching as a kid, that I said, "Oh, you can never do that," because how do you do it? Like, you hear this story, and everybody you talk to, from Stephen King to Carl Reiner, like, when you're growing up, there's no pathway. I think it's easier now because kids say, "Oh, if I do YouTube videos, maybe I can get somewhere." But like 10-year-old Steve Belanger in Fall River, Massachusetts, writing fan letters to Fonzie and Welcome Back, Kotter. Like, there's no way for me to make that leap to what was going on coming out of Hollywood. But once I started doing it,
it seems so unreachable. It's like a whole nother world, right?
It's a whole nother world. And, the fact that I've gotten to be friends with some of the people I idolized as a kid still sometimes just boggles my mind. But I like to tell people that story just to say everything you want to do is out there. Like, when I got headshots the first time, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I just found my first resume, and it was like 8-inch font. I did a scene from barefoot in the park in an acting class. I think that was my experience at that point. And you're just like, oh, I'm looking at other people's resumes going, that's never going to happen. And now, like, I have to cut stuff out of my resume just to make it fit on one page. You just got to take those baby steps to get to the next level. You just got to keep working, plugging away.
All right, so now you're wanting to write comedy at this point? You're doing stand-up, so I guess you have to write your own stuff.
I'm definitely writing my own stuff. I was doing stand-up. I had a great set. I was lucky enough to do a great set at Caroline's, which, back then you used to get have a tape of your set. I would send that out, so I was getting working gigs, as an opener in comedy. So I would go out to clubs and it was usually a 3-man bill, right? You have the headliner does an hour, and then there's a middle guy, and then there's the opener, the setup guy, and that would be me because I was starting out. And I was doing it for a while, and I think at some point every time the middle guy would go up, because you work with new guys every weekend, the middle guy would go up and I'd sit with the headliner, or even if I sat with the middle guy, it'd be people you haven't heard of that absolutely crush a room of 300, and they've been doing it for 20 years. And again, I was still a little younger, and I was like, man, I don't have 20 years. So you get that mentality, and I keep talking about you got to plug away. But sometimes it even gets in our head. I just said, I don't know if I can plug away and do this for 20 years as an opener, leaving my wife every weekend to go stay in a sketchy hotel and work for 30 minutes a night. So I drifted away from stand-up, but that got me back in to acting and writing. So acting in New York City, I chose at the absolute worst time for New York City in 2004, 2005, 2006. I think there was one show in New York, Law and Order. And I'm the only New Yorker who's never been on Law and Order. I think the last time they did a poll, it was 40% of all New Yorkers have appeared in at least one episode of a Law and Order spinoff, except for me.
So then, if there wasn't stuff on screen, were you inclined to go on stage?
I wasn't doing a lot of stage work back then. I was doing a lot of writing. I have a drawer here full of screenplays that never went anywhere. Screenplays, but I also when I left Time Inc., I really thought I was going to get a job as a sitcom writer. That was the role, because I had some good specs. And again, my timing was horrible, because that's right around the time Millionaire had been on TV for years. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? TV was just getting bombarded with quiz shows, reality shows. And at the time, sitcoms there were maybe 3 of them. So again, I was horrible at my timing. Which is basically the one-man show I did was called It's About Time. Because a buddy of mine, Rob Long, who was one of the executive producers on Cheers back in the 80s, and he did a Sullivan and Son a couple years ago. That's how I met him. He wrote a book about being a screenplay writer that he said was a cautionary tale, and I took it as my primer of this is the roadmap of what I'm going to do with my life, accidentally. And he said, you had spec scripts in 2005? That's the worst timing in the world. And there were a few other things. And he's the one who sat across from me at a podcast. He said, dude, that's your script. That's what you should write about, your horrible timing. So that is what became the basis of the one-man show, which is about Penthouse and lots of other horrible issues with my timing. But I had sitcom specs back then that got me meetings in L.A. I would go out to L.A. regularly. I got in with the guys on Scrubs. Had a couple of big agent meetings. But again, there just wasn't enough work. And I had more than one agent tell me, you see this stack? That's a stack of spec scripts from guys who have written for The Simpsons. You're, a 36-year-old green writer from Long Island who doesn't have any credits. It's probably not gonna work. I'm like, oh, okay. So I just kept plugging away. That's what you do. I started getting some acting roles. I was on Damages. I was on Rescue Me. I was on Kidnapped. I was on a couple of other shows that were starting to shoot in New York. And, things kept going, not taking off, but things were moving. I was auditioning for a Bruce Willis movie. I was getting called in, and I was booking some roles. So it just kind of kept things going.
Would you say there was a little mental shift too? From you were saying before, you always felt you weren't that person that could, how can I get to this point and others have achieved and there's no way I can? Or did you say to yourself, well, what the hell? I got to try. Maybe there is something here.
Yeah, at some point there is a shift of all right, I can do. I think I can do this, because the more you work, as you know, you start looking around and going, oh, there's no real difference between me and that guy. He's number 2 on the call sheet. I've got 3 lines or 1 line. I'm like, I think I can do that, which really helped me on sets because there was no intimidation factor. So one of the things I did was Damages, the second season of Damages. I was in the first episode, the first day of shooting for season 2 of Damages, and William Hurt was the big guest star that season. He had a whole arc. So I was doing a scene with a guy named Brett Cullen and William Hurt.
Whoa.
And like, I was over the moon. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's one of my acting idols, broadcast news. You know, he's been in so many amazing things. And we worked together, and this other guy, Brett, who was a friend of William's, we just sat together all day. And we were working like, there's really, you know, there was a camaraderie there. So I became very good friends with Brett, who every time we would golf, people were like, who is that guy? Because he's been in everything. He was in Apollo 13. He was in Lost. He was in just too many shows. He was Reagan's father on Friday Night Lights. If you look at his IMDb for Brett Cullen, he's been in every show. So we just became buddies, and then he knew William, so I'd start golfing with him and William because they were all shooting in New York.
This is your life now, huh? Wow.
And this was my life. And, you know, Long Island, so Bethpage Golf Course is in my backyard. And we played there one day, and you know it was the three of us, so it was a public course, and they added a fourth to our thing. And this guy he teed off, and he started looking at the three of us. William Hurt and Brett Cullen got in the cart and drove away. I was walking, and I'm walking with this guy. He's like, "I'm sorry, but is that the guy from Broadcast News?" And I'm like, "Yeah, Oscar winner William Hurt." Oh my God! And the other guy. Wasn't he on Lost? And he started naming a bunch of shows. I'm like, yes, that's Brett Cullen. He looked at me and he said, forgive me. Who are you? I'm like, I'm nobody. But, you know, they're my acting peers. But all right, so the point of that story is one night we're out to dinner with William. And, you know, we're just talking about the biz. And he said, man, I just don't know if I'm going to work again. And like to me, I'm like, so this never ends. Like that feeling we all have never goes away. When you're the guy who just lost out on, you know, two scenes in Rescue Me. I didn't get that role, but here's William Hurt, who has all these Oscar nominations and some fantastic performances under his belt. He's got the same worries I do. So as I like to say, we're all in the same boat. So screw it. Let's just keep moving on and see what happens.
I'm actually curious now. So we may backpedal a little bit. When you were wanting to leave the corporate world and then get into the biz, Did you have a plan?
I didn't, which is, you know, and I've the big turning point. Popular Science did a news magazine. They did a pilot for a news magazine for PBS, and well, as they were getting ready to do it, they were trying to find a host. And we couldn't find one. But I was in the meetings as we were reviewing tape trying to figure out who was going to be the best personality. And at some point, I don't know, I'm looking at these guys. I'm like, these are the same people I see at the shows I go out for that I don't tell anybody about. Because at that time, my creative pursuits were not known at Time Inc. I didn't really tell them I was leaving. You know, I would leave a board meeting to go do a set at Caroline's. So I walked out of the one meeting when they couldn't find a host, and I went to one of the bosses and I said, look, it's going to sound crazy, but sometimes I leave this building to go audition for that same role, hosts of TV shows and stuff like that. I act and I do stand up. This is what I do in my private time. And I remember the guy looked at me. He was like, get the hell out of here. Like, he thought I was being crazy. I'm like, that's fine. But know that I think I would be good at this. He said, what do you have to, do you have anything on tape? I said, sure, I got, here, watch this. It's 15 minutes of me at Caroline's. Let me know what you think. 20 minutes later, he came back, walked into my office, shut the door. He said, you are some piece of work. All right, I'm going to send this off to the producer. We'll let you know. And the guy called me like the next day from Colorado. He's like, why didn't you speak up before? So anyway, they hired me to co-host the show with somebody they had found out west. We did a pilot where she was going to be the in-studio host, and I was the guinea pig. So I went down to NASA headquarters. They did a test on me that they give to astronauts. It was they put me in a box where they sucked all the air out of the box. It's a test they do to simulate the G-forces on astronauts. So they literally suck all the air out of the box so that your organs move down. So all the organs in my chest lowered like 6 inches. And it's a crazy thing. And then they kind of stop it right as you start to black out.